Welcome to Newtown Speakers Group. I'm Chase. I'm definitely an alcoholic. Will everyone please help me open the meeting with the Serenity Prayer? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anybody new or from out of town? Start over here.
Sam, alcoholic from Philly.
Hey, Sam, welcome.
John, alcoholic.
Hey, John, welcome. Miranda, welcome.
Miranda.
Oh, man. Clona from Axton.
Clona, welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. Got up here or not?
Ricky, I'm from Sellersville.
Ricky,
Hey, Ricky.
welcome.
Sammy from Richmond, Virginia.
Sammy, welcome.
Kevin, first time at this meeting.
Hey, Kevin, welcome. Anybody else? All right. If you have any questions or would like to make this group your home group, please see any group member after the meeting. Will group members please raise their hands? Newtown Speakers encourages sponsorship. Would anybody with a working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Coffee and snacks are available for free in the back of the room. If you need a big book, please see me after the meeting. We also offer childcare during the meeting in the nursery. Do we have any AA-related announcements? Okay. Please turn off all cell phones. Please limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. This is a smoke and vapor-free meeting. Smoking and vaping is allowed outside by the basketball net. Please use the butt cans. And we have a seventh tradition. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. And then I asked Ryan to read the preamble.
Ryan, I'm an alcoholic.
Ryan.
Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement of membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any section, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
And then I asked Greg to read the 12 steps.
Greg, I'm an alcoholic.
Greg.
These are the 12 steps. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
And then if everyone will please help me welcome our speaker, Mary from Bon Air Big Book in Richmond, Virginia.
Hi, my name's Mary. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Mary.
Okay, so, wow, I always get nervous. I don't know why my heart's beating like 100 miles a minute. What I'm supposed to do, what they've taught me to do, is to tell you in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like now. Janine, thank you for allowing me to speak. One of the things that I was taught very early by my sponsor was to say yes. In the very beginning, I used to question that. Everything she would tell me, I would say, I would think to myself, does that make sense? I had to know the reason why before I would attempt to do things. And unfortunately, as a result, it kept me out there for a long, long time. Desperation brought me to the point of where I didn't even ask anymore. I was just going to do it. And one of the things I was told was, when AA asks you to do something, you say yes. And what I found is that every time I do, it's something I would never want to miss. So I'm grateful to have that opportunity. So I can tell you that I didn't have a bad childhood. I was born in upstate New York. I'm a New Yorker. And I had two sisters and a brother. Two parents that were wonderful. And I had a pretty good childhood. One of the things I can tell you was that I never thought anything was enough. I wasn't enough, and everything in my life was not enough. My mom and dad, we were born in a resort type community in upstate New York, and we had a decent amount of money, but I didn't want to let everybody else around me know that things were just kind of like normal. So I would say, if they would ask, my father owned a hotel and a restaurant, so I would tell everybody he owned a chain of hotels and restaurants. And I took gymnastics lessons, so I told everybody I was training for the Olympics. And this is pretty much how things went for me. I lived in a world of illusions. It was a fantasy world that I created for myself, because I just really was convinced that, something was wrong. Like, I was born to the wrong family. I was really destined to greatness, and somehow accidentally I ended up where I was. And that's what I really thought. So I can remember, I convinced myself at a young age that I was having a relationship with Ralph Macchio from The Karate Kid. And what I was going to do was, he was waiting for me, so I needed to get myself to California so we could start our life together. So I packed a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter, and I was off. And I got as far as the corner. I sat down and I made myself a couple of sandwiches and called it a day. But that's pretty much how my childhood went for me. I never felt like I was enough, though. My sisters were smart, beautiful, popular, had a lot of friends. My brother was a football player, and all the girls liked him. And nobody told me I wasn't enough. I just felt like that inside. I felt like I couldn't measure up. So, I kind of, on top of the fantasy type situation, I was looking for something external to me to make me feel good. But I couldn't figure out what that was. In the beginning, it was kind of like I would act out and I would do a lot of crazy things. I would get in trouble at school and things like that. I remember one time I stole my teacher's dog collar. She had her dog collar because her dog had died and had it in her top drawer. And I thought it was a necklace. So I pulled it out and I wore this dog collar around, Spike. And everybody was like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's my necklace." And she's looking at me like, "Oh my gosh." And of course I lied about everything from a young age, I know that that's my dog collar. You got it out of my drawer. No, it's not. My dad got this for me. And that's what I always did. At my grandmother's 80th birthday party, I was 8 years old, and I discovered alcohol. So my aunts and uncles and everybody, they were in the carport, and they were making these brandy slushes. And when we were young, it was nothing for us. I mean, Irish Catholic, we drank. So I was always allowed to take sips from a very early age. But in this particular occasion, I decided I was going to make glasses for myself. So I would sneak in and I would drink these brandy slushes and I'd run back out to the pool and swim. And what I found was that I didn't feel uncomfortable anymore. I didn't feel self-conscious anymore. I felt like people laughed at me. They thought I was funny. They thought I was cute. I mean, I didn't have to worry about measuring up to anybody else because in that moment, it was all about me. And alcohol always did that for me. So I never stopped. Nothing else could measure up to it. Throughout high school, I drank. At first, I had this girlfriend named Lisa, and her father was extremely ill, and he could only stay on the first floor of their condominium. So Lisa and I would take his alcohol, and we would go upstairs or downstairs, and we would drink. And that was okay, for a while. But then eventually, I decided to drink at school. So it was probably in about 10th grade. I was drinking regularly, I can tell you, from the time I was in 6th grade, so like 11. I was drinking on a regular basis. But at this particular occasion, I had gotten the lead in a school play. And I never liked to have anyone looking at me because I felt really insecure. But I knew that if I drank that, I was going to feel confident enough to have all these people looking at me. So I went into the bathroom and I drank a couple of beers and I threw the empty cans in the garbage can. And I went out there and unfortunately somebody had found the beer cans, and the principal came in and said, listen, if somebody tells the truth about, the fact that they drank these beers, you're not going to get in any trouble. But if you lie about it, then we're going to throw the axe down on you. So I decided I was going to tell the truth because it was the easy way out because I didn't want to get in trouble. Not because I really felt bad about what I did. So I told the truth and I ended up getting suspended. And my father went crazy. How dare you? How dare you suspend her? She told the truth. What are you trying to teach this girl? And so I learned that I could manipulate people from a very young age. I tried to do the right thing. I was trying to do the right thing. And my father would always be my rescuer. My father and I were extremely close. My mom and dad were very religious. My father was going to be a priest, and my mother was going to be a nun. But my mother decided that she was going to opt out because they wouldn't allow her to drive a car and smoke cigarettes. So they ended up meeting at a wedding when my mother got drunk and threw up on my father. And it was love at first sight, and, years on, there I came. So I was brought up in a very religious family. And everything was about God, and I constantly heard about, this God, and I was like, no, I don't know, I don't buy into all that. I thought it was a good idea, but I really just thought it was something that people fabricated. It was just like, obviously they don't have any meaning in their life, so they're trying to find something to create meaning. And I really didn't need to do that because I believed that I was destined for greatness and I could do that on my own. So I attempted to do that. So high school really wasn't that bad. I did act out a little bit, and drinking was a little bit of a problem, especially because I embarrassed myself a lot. I was never able to drink in a very sexy way. It was always one of those things where I would be the one who was drunk and I would pass out and throw up all over the place. That was always how it was for me. However, it was the effect produced by that alcohol that I never wanted to give up. It was always the first one. I was always chasing the first one. And I could never get that out of my mind. It didn't matter how things ended up. I just wanted that feeling of what it felt like when I put one in me. I never wanted not to have that feeling. And I couldn't imagine going through life not having that feeling. So it didn't matter what the consequences were going to be. So I got into a really good college. I did pretty good academically. And, I went to a school that was really big in football, and there was a lot of tailgaters and things like that. We would drink before the football games, and I would remember the tailgater, but didn't remember the football game because, everything was a blackout always. I do not remember 1 minute of my senior year. I don't know what happened, who was there, what classes I took, nothing. So I graduated, and I, was destined to start my life of greatness, and I went to what was familiar. My father owned a hotel and a bar, so I started managing hotels and bars. I always went for what I knew, what was comfortable to me and what was easy for me. And at first, things were okay, but then it was one of those things where I could drink while I was at work, and I would drink with the employees, and we would drink after hours, and I would end up losing my jobs. And that went on for a while, and was probably, at that time, I moved back home because my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I decided I was going to go home and I was going to take care of my mother. And I couldn't stop drinking. At this point in time, I couldn't stop drinking. It was really bad. I was making matters worse for them. And my mother said, she's got to get out. And my father couldn't imagine me not being with them. He could not imagine not having his child okay and safe with him. So he said, there's no way I'm going to do that, but I'll give her a room at the hotel. And so my mother, really had no choice in the situation. She went along with it. And I stayed in an efficiency in the hotel, and I drank all the time. And I got this wonderful specimen of a man, if that's what you want to call him. He was a hood rat. He was America's Most Wanted. He was everything I thought was cool. And he was fun, and he was trouble, and I was always fascinated with street life and street living, and he was like the epitome of badness to me. So, of course, I moved him in because he had nowhere to live. So, of course, my father has this room, and it's free, and, we've got the bar here, and I've got the key, and it's free alcohol all the time, and bring your friends, and, that's what we did. We partied all the time, and, I kept the guests up, and things were just horrifying. And all of a sudden it came to this day where all of a sudden it's like I noticed that there was a pattern with this guy, because he would all of a sudden get paid, but then he'd disappear for like 4 days, and he'd come in with no money. He'd come in completely broke. And I was like, it's got to be a woman. There's all the alcohol in the world here. It's got to be another woman. He's cheating on me. So I decided I'm going to be Inspector Gadget, and I'm going to find out what he's doing. And so I started chasing him. So I found out it wasn't a woman necessarily, but it was another substance. And in my mind, I thought to myself, I can't imagine anything that would make someone disappear for 4 or 5 days. Can't imagine that. What could be that good that could make someone disappear like that? So I tried it, and that brought things to a whole other different level. It was just another thing that I could add to my repertoire. So what I decided I was going to do was, I was always one of those people that I didn't want to leave the party because I was afraid I was going to miss something, So I just decided I was going to stay. Why go back to the hotel? I'm just going to stay where I'm at, because then I won't miss anything. And I did that. And things got really out of control. I decided that I needed to find some way to support myself living in the street, because my family didn't want to have anything to do with me at this point in time. I found myself, I got pregnant intentionally, because something just felt like it was missing, and I really thought that if I got pregnant that this person would not leave me. And I just wanted someone who was going to love me and not leave me. So I got pregnant, and I said to myself, well, if I get pregnant, then I can give this life up, because who's going to do this stuff and be pregnant? Well, let me tell you, that didn't work. So in order to support myself, I decided that I was going to get involved in pharmaceutical sales, street pharmaceutical sales. And I was on a delivery, and, one of the things I can say about my life in alcoholism is that what was always in front of me, the reality of life as it was nothing that I could see. There was always a lie that was going on in my mind, and that's what I would believe, but I couldn't see reality. So I paid no attention to the fact that this person had guns all over the place. He was a Vietnam vet who had PTSD and had guns all over his house, and he decided he didn't like the transaction, so he pulled out a gun and started shooting me. So here I am, 7 months pregnant at the time, and I took 3 bullets, and I turned around and I ran out the door, and I collapsed in the snow, and I would love to tell you all that was enough, and all of a sudden I got sober and all was well, but that's not what happened. What happened was, I got up, I went to the closest place I could so that I could drink and do what I needed to do, because if I was going to die, I was going to die the way I wanted to. And that was the plan. Next thing you know, I came to in cuffs in an emergency room. Spent some time in jail because it turned out that Vietnam vet, his brother was a police officer. So I ended up spending some time in jail, and I got out, and the first thing I did was go back to what was familiar. I went back to the street, and I continued to do what I did. I can remember people looking at me and saying, "You're pregnant. How could you do that? You're pregnant. You're carrying this baby. What is wrong with you? What's going to happen to this child?" And I was like, whatever, In my head, I think I knew in my head that I was pregnant. Obviously, my stomach was out to here. I could feel this child convulsing in my body every day from withdrawal. But I just couldn't stop. No matter how much I wanted to, I just couldn't stop. And then all of a sudden, I go into labor, and my daughter is born, and I look at her, and for the first time, it went from here to here. For the first time, I said, oh my God, I'm going to be a mother. I'm a mother. What am I going to do? I knew that I wasn't raised. My mother loved me the best way she could. And how could I not try to give that to my child? So I got sober. And what I did was I put her into foster care, and I went from first of all, let me just stop right there, because no, I didn't. It wasn't immediate. I did leave her in the hospital and go out and put one in me. Then I came back. I signed her into, I went into the psych ward, signed her over to child protection, and I went to a 30-day rehab, a 6-month rehab, a 6-month halfway house. And I did actually get sober. I was sober for 15 and a half years. At first I went to a lot of meetings, but there was always something that I wasn't willing to do, from the very beginning. They said things like get a sponsor, okay? And I got one, but I decided I didn't like her. She pissed me off for one reason or another, said something I didn't want to hear. So I decided I didn't need one anymore. They said things like, don't get in a relationship maybe for the first year because your picker's broken. And I decided I was going to get one, and I got one with this great guy who had 10 years, and he was like the coolest guy in the room because I always went for the coolest guy in the room. The problem is he had 5 other girlfriends. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, girlfriends. I was Wednesday. I told myself that he was going to give up Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday because once he realized how great I was, he was going to give up the rest and it was going to be all about me. That didn't work. But just a lot of things, like work these steps, they told me. These steps you have to work. And I said, well, I can clearly see that I've done these things in my head. I've done these things in my head. I'm intelligent. I know how to do this thing. Maybe all of you might need to do it this way, but I don't need to do it that way, because I'm really smart. I'm advanced. So what I can tell you is the basic things that I did kept me without putting alcohol in me from taking a drink for 15 and a half years, but I can tell you I was crazy. for that 15 and a half years, I was crazy. I got a job, a really great job. And I always measured how I was doing in my life. I measured being enough by the things that I had. So if I had a good job and if I had a lot of money, if I looked good, then all was well. Somehow I thought that if I could only achieve enough money, property, and prestige, then maybe all that stuff wouldn't have been true anymore. I could outgrow those things just by what I attained. So I was very successful. I did really well in business. I had so much money. I had all this status and prestige that I was looking for. But I was a nut, okay? Now, the first thing, I knew that I was very unhappy. I was miserable, so I decided that it had to be the fact that I was fat. Okay? So I decided I was going to get as fat as I could, and so that they would pay for the gastric bypass surgery, because if I lost all this weight and my body looked good, then I was going to be happy. So I couldn't gain enough weight, so what I did was I went to Target and I bought the barbells that you put around your ankles, the weights that that can make you heavier, and I put a 10-pound here and 10-pound here, so that when I got on the scale, I would weigh enough so that they would pay for the gastric bypass surgery. So I ended up having the gastric bypass surgery, and I lost some weight, but I didn't lose enough weight, and that had to have been the problem. So I decided to get a revision to the gastric bypass surgery. That was successful. I did lose a lot of weight. Forget about the fact that I was in ICU and the doctor slipped and nicked my spleen and that almost died, because that doesn't matter. Just like the consequences never mattered. It was what I wanted to accomplish. It was like the effect produced by alcohol, putting the first one in me. That's what I focused on, never the consequence. So here I lost some weight. Who cares if I have no immune system? Well, then after I lost this weight, I had all this skin hanging down from my stomach and from my legs because I had lost all this weight. So I know what the problem is. I need to get plastic surgery so that I can look good, because this doesn't look good, and that's why I don't feel good on the inside. So I did what every sane and rational person does. I got on the internet. And plastic surgery is too expensive in the United States. So why don't I look in Mexico? And how do I pick a doctor? Maybe according to price. Let me just pick the best deal. So I picked the guy who would do all this, give me a full body makeover for $9,000, including flight and a hotel stay at the Hampton Inn right by Mexico City, where all the guns and drug dealers and shooting and killing and kidnapping is. But that doesn't matter to me. And you know how I took this plane over to Mexico City. I found my doctor because he was hanging up a sign like this thing. Mary called. I proceeded to go to a clinic that was like a backyard clinic. I mean, they had me strip and like literally rubbed me with iodine up and down, and then laid me on a table and put a gas mask on me. 21 hours later, I woke up all cut up. But that was rational to me, okay? So I came back to what I thought was, I looked better, but I still felt like crap. So what's up with that? That doesn't make any sense. So I know what it has to be. I'm mentally ill. I'm mentally ill. So all of a sudden I was at work one day, and it's like I thought to myself, I can't possibly be an alcoholic. I can't possibly be one. That was a long time ago. I was really young when I did all that stuff. So I said, everybody does when they're young, does stupid things. So now that I've achieved all this stuff in life, and I have all this, clearly I can have a drink. So all of a sudden one day I'm out with a friend, and she passes over a martini, and I drank it, and let me tell you, it was on. At first, what I found was I could drink just on the weekend, but that lasted for about 3 weekends. Then it was back to the everyday. And at this point in time, I had a husband, and I had 3 children. And I had a house, and I had cars, and I had an amazing job. And I had what I thought other people would measure as being a good, I thought that this made me good, so I had this stuff. And all of a sudden I found myself leaving my house and living in the street really quickly. I knew that the answer had to be in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew that it had to be. There was a problem, though. I couldn't stop putting something in me. I couldn't stop. I would come to meetings, and I would hear what people would have to say, but only partially. Like, only part of it would go in. One of the things that I think was the most important thing that I remembered was keep coming back. That's one thing that I did. I can tell you that, I kept on trying to get sober, but it seemed like I could never get more than 30 days to 90 days. And when 30 days to 90 days would come, I would start to look good on the outside. I would dress up my garbage can. I was really a dressed up garbage can. So I would start to have my nails done, and I would start to have my hair done, and I would say, I think I deserve a drink. And that's exactly what I would do. And sometimes it would happen even without me thinking about it. It's like I'd be driving down a street and I'd see a sign and I would just go in that direction. And I'd be like, my sponsor would say to me, what happened? And I'd say, I don't know. I was driving down the street and I saw that sign. And my sponsor would always say the most profound things to me. Like, why don't you go a different direction? Why don't you just take a different street? And I was like, yeah, whatever. The problem was I thought that the things that I did in order to get that 15 and a half years, the half measures that I did at that period of time that kept me without putting something in me, I could do those same things after the 15 and a half year period. When people say, when you relapse, you pick up where you left off, I can assure you that that is not true. My disease is progressive. So when I picked up after the 15 and a half years, I picked up with 15 and a half years worth of power underneath me. I came out with a roaring lion, ready to take me down, and that's exactly what happened to me. My life became a living hell, and I could not control it, and the half measures availed me nothing. They didn't avail me half, 3/4. They availed me absolutely nothing. And I couldn't figure out why, I didn't realize that I knew that when I was out there putting things in me, I knew that I couldn't continue to live the way that I was. I didn't want to live that way anymore. What I didn't know is that the reason why I would always pick up after 30 or 60 days was because I didn't know how to live sober either. I didn't know how to live with alcohol. I didn't know how to live without alcohol. So what's one to do? And that's where, what do? I didn't think that I needed to listen to anything my sponsor had to say because I really thought that I knew what was best for me. I didn't understand that my A game brought me to where I was at. My best efforts got me to where I was at. I didn't understand that my thinking, my alcoholism centered in my mind. I didn't understand that. I had no concept of that. And I certainly wasn't going to allow anyone else to tell me that. So what that did for me is it kept me in the streets for 4 years in and out. I left 3 children and a husband at home alone for a very long time. I left kids crying in the window, crying for their mother, and I just walked away like it was nothing. I can remember my daughter saying, why can't you be the mom we deserve? I can remember my son. I can remember calling him on his birthday. And I can remember saying to him, Justice, I'm so sorry. Mommy is so sorry. I will do my best to bring you a present. And he said to me, I don't care about that. So all I want is you. And I just couldn't stop. You know, I thought that if I only put enough in me, maybe, just maybe, the pain would go away. I thought that maybe if I put enough in me, maybe I wouldn't wake up at all. The problem is I always did. And then I'd be angry that I did. So I went on a tour of rehabs, a traveling roadshow over that 4-year period. At first, what I was willing to do was to go to the IOP. I said, I'll do the IOP. You know, like, I'll take door number 1, Alex. Like, it's really my choice. So I was going to take the IOP. But it was a 3-month IOP that took me a year and a half. Because I kept on blowing the test every single time. So then I said, okay. I'll do the 30 days. And I would come out, and the same thing would happen. Then it was, you got to go to the 6-month programs. So I'm at a 6-month program. I had my sponsor had hung in with me. You know, thank God she never left me. But I'm at this 6-month program, and what always happened was I was like Pigpen from the Peanuts. Do you know? All that dust cloud all over them. And I never stayed. When they say, wait, don't leave before the miracle happens, what that means for me is it's when the dust settles. There was all this dust, all this confusion. I couldn't see reality. I didn't know the truth from the false. All there was lies in my head. My mind wouldn't shut up. It was racing incessantly, and I couldn't stay sober long enough to hear any of the solution. So I'm in this program, and my sponsor and I had gone through 164 pages 2 times, I might add. The whole time it's like eyes wide shut. My eyes are open, but I have no idea what she's saying to me. I'm like doing this, okay? So I'm in this program, and we were going over the big book, and all of a sudden, something hit me. I had my first awakening, and I was like, I called her up on the phone, and I said, oh, this is all about God. She said, no, blank, Mary. You know, it's like I had been around for so long. I had been sober for that 15 and a half years. Never once did I didn't even hear the word God, and it's in our steps. You know, I had no concept of that. I was angry. You know, I was angry with God because I really thought that if there was a God, he may be there for other people, but he wasn't going to be there for me because I was too bad. That's what I thought. And I really thought that, you know, during my, you know, I'm going to redo my body stage, it's surely got to be how I looked. I also went to all these different religions thinking maybe religion was the answer. Maybe I needed to find this religion that could keep me sober. But it didn't work. So I was thinking, I don't know about this God thing. My parents understand this God thing, and I couldn't separate it from religion. Let's just put it that way. I didn't want to do all that religious stuff, and I thought that that's what this really meant. So I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So as a result, I still stayed out. I still, you know, at this point, it was never more than 5.5 months. I would get 5.5 months, and I would go back out again. So I went to also my home group, which was the local detox. And when I was there, I found out that my father, who was the love of my life, he was dying of cancer, and they told me that he had 3 months left to live. And immediately, I could not imagine living my life without him. Reason being is, I never ever felt like I was enough, or that I would ever be enough in this world. And there was only 2 things that made me feel like I was enough. One was alcohol, and one was my dad. You know, that's it. When I felt like I could not do something in life, he would always tell me I could. You know, alcohol did that for me. You know, what was I going to do without either one of them? So I proceeded to think to myself, how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? And I just proceeded to go back out in the streets and live out in the streets. And that's what I kept on doing. And I can tell you how things were at the end. I couldn't talk to my family. Nobody would accept my phone calls or talk to me. The job that I had, I lost. I lived in the streets going from house to house. Even the worst of people didn't want me around. I thought my body was infested with bugs. Like, literally, I went from hospital to hospital telling them that I was infested because I really thought I was infested with bugs. And as soon as they would tell me that I was fine, I'd leave and I'd go to another hospital. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep because I was afraid of sleeping because I knew someone would probably hurt me if I fell asleep. And so that's what I did. And finally, one day, I was looking for an event. People talk about a bottom. Have you reached your bottom? Have you reached your bottom? And I was looking for this thing to happen, this bottom. The last time what I thought the bottom was when I got shot. But here I was, all the people that I associated with, they were overdosing, they were getting raped and murdered. And, I'm saying to myself, what's mine going to be? What's my bottom got to be? Does it have to be me dying out there like so-and-so behind Wendy's? Someone have to stab me to death? What's it going to be for me? It wasn't an event. What it was me finally, it's like I got these moments of clarity. And it was this moment of clarity that happened one day. I'm standing behind a door hiding from someone. And I just knew that I couldn't live anymore. I couldn't continue to do what I was doing. I couldn't stand myself and what I had become. And I didn't know what to do about that. So I cried out to a God who I didn't know existed at all. And I said, whoever you are, whatever you are, please help me. I escaped that situation. I called somebody from the program and they came and picked me up. And they, at this point in time, I had no insurance. I had nothing. I was wearing the same dress, underwear, and flip-flops that I walked out of my house in 4 months previous. Okay? And I couldn't go back to the local detox, because they would keep me in there for 4 days, and then I'd go right back out and do the exact same thing. It was never long enough for me. So it's like, the people from the program said, we'll take you back to Tucker's. I said, no way. I said, I've done that. How many times? It's not enough. I don't, I need some help. So they took me to the local men's homeless shelter. And that homeless shelter had a recovery program in it. And I walked in, and the director of the program, I sat and I told him what was going on with me, and he looked at me and he said, God loves you. And I lost it. So he asked me if I was willing to go to Louisville, Kentucky. And I'd have to go for a year. And I said, I can't. And he said, why not? I said, I can't leave my husband and my kids. He said, are you living with them right now? I said, no. He said, all right then. So he packed me a lunch, and I got on a bus, and, I had it in my mind I was going to go to Louisville, Kentucky, but somehow I thought, as delusional as I was, that I was going to a horse farm for equine therapy. Because they talk about the Kentucky Derby, and there's horses in the Kentucky Derby, so I was going to a horse farm. So about 27 hours later, I wake up, and I'm in the midst of a city, and there's people passed out all over the place. It smelled like urine, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not in a horse farm. So they bring me to this homeless shelter, and, I go through the detox part of the program, and then they move me over to the program, and we lived in the homeless shelter. But I was really grossed out by all the homeless people in there. Because they were gross, and they smelled, and they were dirty. But here I was in the same dress, underwear, and flip-flops for 4 months, but they were gross. So I probably had almost 90 days sober. And I woke up one morning and I looked at the lady next to me. And I said, oh my God, I'm homeless. I couldn't believe it. It took 3 months of being sober for me to really realize the nature of my condition. I had no idea I was even homeless. For the first time in my life, I realized that we were the same. I wasn't able to identify with anyone. I had to be stripped of absolutely everything to really realize that there is no difference between you and me. There's no difference between me and anyone in here, or anyone else that's homeless, or anything. I am you and you are me. And I had no idea, but for the first time in my life, I did. So that was something that could be built upon. I got a sponsor while I was there, and started working steps. And anything they asked me to do, I was willing to do. Whatever they told me to do. They said, walk 6 miles to a meeting in the rain. I walked 6 miles to a meeting in the rain. They said, would you have done this for a drink? Absolutely. Okay, so off I was, and I did whatever I was told. It was probably about 90 days sober. I actually called my mother, and she answered the phone. And she says to me, you need to come home. She said, your father has about 4 days to live. And I was terrified. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? How am I going to stay sober? How am I going to do this? How am I going to live without him? So I called my sponsor and I said, I'm terrified. They want me to go back to New York. I don't know how I'm going to stay sober. My father's dying. I don't know how I'm going to live without him. And she said, Mary, it's not about you. She said, it's about him. It's not about you. It's about your mother, who's been married to him for 52 years. It's not about you, Mary. It's about your kids who are going to be suffering, and you've had them suffering for the last 4 years, and they're about to lose their grandfather. It's about them, Mary. It's not about you. And she said, no matter whoever loves you or leaves you or dies, you don't have to drink. And then she said, and your job is to be of maximum service to God and others. And that's what you do. So I got on the plane. I made it home. And the first thing that my father said was, you have no idea how important this is. And I was able to say all the things that I wanted to say to him. This man who loved me my whole life, who cleaned up after me, defended me, protected me. I was able to take care of him when he needed me the most. And more important than me being able to say what I needed to say, he was able to say what he needed to say to me. And I think the first unselfish act I made in my whole life was the morning of his death. When I asked God to take him because he was suffering. And I was able to hold his hand as he died. And I owe that to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a debt that I'll never be able to repay. During that 4 days with my dad, it was the worst storm that I could ever imagine. It was the biggest loss that I've ever had. And during that period of time, I felt a peace and a calm that I've never known. I can't explain it. I can't tell you how it happened, why it happened. I didn't make it happen. But I felt the presence of God. And God put a hedge of protection around me, and I was just okay. So, of course, my family thought, well, she's definitely going to use this. Everybody knew how close we were. And everybody thought that I was going to use that as an excuse to go back out and drink. And I didn't. It's just, they were drinking around me. It's as if it wasn't even happening. I was just completely safe and protected. So, of course, they thought I was cured. And they said, well, just go home. You can go home now. My husband had decided he wasn't going to divorce me, and clearly you can just come home and all will be well. And I said, absolutely not. I'm going back and I'm finishing what I started. So I got back on the plane and I went back to Kentucky, and I stayed there until I completed all 12 steps with my sponsor. And I had received some legal charges, and at the end of all that, I had to actually, well, I guess I had to, but I wanted to do the right thing, so I turned myself in. And it was okay. Things went okay. And, now I can tell you that, from the time I got back home, it was a while. It took a while for me, because it's like I never knew how to feel comfortable sober, and I never knew how to make friends or how to develop relationships. There was a little bit that was different because the steps changed something in me. There's this thing called the 4-step, if you guys don't know, but there's part of the 4-step. I would always leave something out. There was always one thing that I would leave out in the 4-step because I couldn't imagine ever telling anybody that, because if you really knew me, if you knew that about me, you would never ever accept me. So I didn't want anyone to know, so I would keep it to myself. But I was just so tired of drinking, so tired of living like I was living. I was like, whatever, I'm going to write it down. And so it came to the point where I was doing my 5th step, and my sponsor said to me, did you say everything? And I said, no. She said, what didn't you say? And I told her. And she said, yeah. She said, I felt like that too and she named something similar. She said, I bet you felt like this. I said, I felt exactly like this. For the first time in my life, I connected with another human being, exactly as I was, honestly and truly. You know all of me, and you really still say you love me? Really? You really can? And I was able to look at people in the eyes. So when I came home, it was a little bit different. I felt like, I didn't feel like I was an alien waiting for the mothership anymore, but I didn't quite know how to do it. So my sponsor said, and always told me, you get in the middle of AA. And that's what I did. I've learned how to get in the middle of AA by the example that my sponsor has, by her example. They said, get in your sponsor's pocket, is what they told me. And so what that means to me is that, if I want what she has, I do what she does. When she says, a lot of times I'll say, that is so great. And she'll say, that's what we do. And so I learned that that's what we do. So I go to the meetings early. I set up for the meetings. I sponsor women. It's the most amazing thing in the world to sponsor somebody. I could tell you the 12 steps are the solution. I didn't know that before. There's 3 sides to the triangle. I would always leave one of them out. I didn't want to have anything to do with service. It was enough for me to come to a meeting and talk to you. That's where I was in the beginning. I didn't want to have, there was always something that I didn't want to have anything to do with these steps, but I'll come to meetings. But it was, what I've learned is all 3 sides of that triangle are just as equally as important. The chair is going to collapse if I don't have all 3 rungs. So I've done everything. I continue to do everything she suggests. I tell her everything. And she shows me how to live. I'm learning how to live, just like I'm a little kid for the first time. I'm learning how to develop relationships with people. I'm learning how to stand in front of people and talk, even though my legs are shaking. I'm learning how to be a wife to my husband. I'm learning how to be a mother to my children. It's hard. I left my kids angry. They were hurt. It's taken a long time to rebuild relationships with them, and I understand how they feel. I really understand how they feel. But the one thing I can say is there's something that's amazingly different in my life, and it's the relationship that I have with God. If it weren't for AA, if it weren't for these 12 steps, I would never have this relationship with God, and it's this relationship with God that keeps me sober. And I know that no matter what's happening in my life, that same feeling that I had when my father died, I have that today. I know no matter what happens to me that I'm okay. I've never had that before. I know that I'm enough. It doesn't matter what I have. I've never not come into a room without the most in outfit, all brand new. I never wore it again. Hair all done, nails to a T, diamond rings. I've never not done that. But today I just don't care. Sure, I like to look nice, but as long as I'm not that person wearing that same dress, pair of drawers, and flip-flops that I was before, all is well. I don't have to be a dressed-up garbage can anymore. Because what was wrong with Mary was on the inside. That's what Mary had to deal with. And when Mary did that, Mary became enough. I know that I'm a work in progress. It's every day, waking up and thanking God for what He's given me. Being grateful, knowing that the life I have right now is not something I deserve based upon the pain that I experienced. It's a gift from God. Everything that I have is a gift. He allows me to be of service so that I can be of maximum use to Him and to others, so that I can let people know that I have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. I am no longer hopeless or helpless. When you look at me in my face, you see light in my eyes. I'm not a prisoner anymore. I'm not a slave to that anymore. I live. I don't just breathe in and out, sapping what I can out of life. My focus is what can I do for life? What can I do for somebody else? I could tell you, if you're new, just stay. They told me keep coming back. I kept coming back, but just stay. It's so much easier. It's so much easier. It feels much better on the inside of the boat than it does hanging onto the outside and letting the waves slap you to and fro, because eventually you're just going to let go. Because that's what I did. Get in the middle. That's all I got to say. Thanks for letting me share.
And we'll close with the Lord's Prayer.